Hello and welcome to Open Mind UFO Radio. I am your host Alejandro Rojas, and I am here with Martin Sickly Willis.
Excuse me. Yes.
Oh, geez.
No, I'm actually doing better. There was a high amount of virus going around at the UFO conference for some reason, but that's the worst thing that happened there. It was such a wonderful time. Other than that.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's sick in here in Arizona. We've got the highest level of the flu and everything, and I've been sick here and there, but mostly been able to avoid it. But my girlfriend, her daughter, most of the people at work, Michael, our video guy, is out today because he's sick. People are coughing and hacking. It's so weird. Everybody in Arizona has gotten sick. And so
I think it's like
that many UFO Congress goers.
I know so many people I've spoken with. I think it's like the government did a Legionnaire's disease type thing.
Those bastards.
They had to have. Yeah.
So the UFO Congress, we're going to talk a lot about it with our guest, Nick Pope. But I can let people know Nick Pope is our guest. We're going to talk about several things which, Martin and I will talk about now. So mostly related to the Congress. Of course, he did a talk about disclosure. We actually don't talk much about his talk because we have so much to talk about. We talk about how he was really excited to have Merrill Cook at the conference. I mean, he thought that was amazing. So we talk about that, Merrill Cook being a former congressman. And then we talk about this movie that is coming up on Thursday. So I'm doing a ticket giveaway, in fact, and I'll explain that more at the end of the show. But for you listeners listening today, which is Monday, May 7th, if you send us an email, by the end of the day, or at least by early morning tomorrow, you'll have a chance to win a set of tickets to a movie coming up. And that movie is The Phoenix Incident, based off of the Phoenix Light sighting from 1997. It's a fiction movie, but this guy is really into UFOs. The movie maker was there at the conference. They screened the movie, a special screening for free at the conference, and we did an interview. Nick Pope, Stanton Friedman, Lee Spiegel did kind of this roundtable. They've edited it down to 45 minutes, and it's going to show after the movie at these special screenings.
Oh, wow. Now, this is a national screening, isn't it?
Yeah, it's national, all over the country. There's hundreds of theaters that will be showing this. This is a special thing for March 10th. Fathom Events is doing this special event where they're doing a pre-screening of this movie along with the UFO panel. Yeah,
and I think it's Keith Aram or something like that, I believe.
Keith Aram is the name of the filmmaker. I know I had him on the podcast a few months ago, but he's been on a couple other podcasts, I think now, at least one or two other UFO podcasts. I think it was on Coast to Coast also recently. But did you get a chance to see the movie?
I did not. I was doing something else that evening when it was playing, and I did miss it. But I've got to say, Keith is very enthusiastic. Seemed like a really nice guy.
Did you get to talk with him?
Oh yeah, we talked, and but he's he just seemed like we also talked about when you had first discovered the film going out. And you saw the guy from Seinfeld and all that.
Yeah.
And we got a good it was a pretty good laugh out of that. He never once meant to confuse the issue of the Phoenix Lights. That was just a viral campaign.
Yeah. Yeah, and so people know one of the actors in the movie was on Seinfeld. And this actor, they had a viral kind of campaign about a year ago. Well, most of my listeners know where they were tweeting about UFOs and stuff, and we kind of busted him. We figured out what it was, and that's how we got to know each other. He's like, you busted us on the viral campaign, and we want to give you a heads up when we do it again. And he also was like, I'm into UFOs, so I want to get into the community and have real research be part of the film.
Wow, I didn't know that part. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's why he was there at the conference and everything. So, yeah, the conference was a lot of fun. We'll talk more about it with Nick, but you had a good time?
Oh, my goodness. It was a highlight of the last several years. It was just a wonderful time. Really wonderful time. And the location, the venue where that is held is just heavenly. It's a wonderful place.
Yeah, it's so gorgeous. The weather was absolutely perfect. I would like to take it somewhere bigger, but at the same time, the special feel that we have where we're at now, I mean, it's just a gorgeous place. I don't think that would be reproducible.
I don't think so.
Yeah, no. But it's so small that, we get completely packed, and it'd be nice to have more people involved. But what were a couple of the highlights, curiously, for you?
Well, I really liked Emily Trim from the Ariel School Phenomenon, the encounter back in the 1990s. That was really my favorite because, to me, that's one of the most incredible stories. And just to hear her talk in her own words and what she went through as one of the young children, now she's in her 20s, that was definitely the highlight for me. And then it was really great, of course, to see Jacques Vallée up there with Lee, my old buddy Lee. They were just great together. And also, I thought Merrill was very good. I did listen in. I was in on that one. And it was really good to hear someone like him talk about UFOs. So it was just an extraordinary time. I don't know how you're going to top it next year. I have no idea.
But you know what? We think of that every year. Every year it's like, oh my gosh, how are we going to top this year? But luckily, every year comes together pretty well. And I'm excited about next year already. I mean, we're already working on it, and I think we've got a good combination of people, and I'm already really excited about next year. I'm not feeling under the gun. I'm feeling like we're going to have another great year next year, so I'm feeling pretty good about it. So, especially now that I was a little worried, a few days ago, but now since I've been working on it in the last few days, I'm kind of like, wow, this is going to be great. So, this is awesome.
All right.
So because I didn't have, because of the conference, I haven't had a show in a while, so I'm happy to be back. But I'm a little sad to say I'm not going to have a show next week either, because I'm going to be out in the middle of the ocean at this time next week, and I'm not, apologetic about that whatsoever. I'm excited about it. After that, all those months of worry and putting together stuff, and you never know how it's going to go, and it's so stressful and kind of freaky. But I'm just going to chill out, and I'm going to do a cruise next week.
Oh, I thought you were going to be on a USO or something.
Oh, yeah, that would be nice, but I would rather have something a little more relaxing, unless there's some sort of USO that is nice and big and luxurious. But the problem with that is you wouldn't want to be seen. You're all freaked out about that. You're getting used to
watch for implants.
Yeah, the extraterrestrial customs or the food. I'm a vegetarian. So
you never know what you'll be eating, right?
Yeah, so when you go, work with foreigners, you don't know how they deal with vegetarianism or anything. So, maybe later on, but next week I just want to chill out.
Well, you have yourself a great time.
Thanks. So, let's get into, I guess, the UFO news.
Sure, and I start, I guess. So I am going to talk about a Omaha police officer has a triangle UFO counter, another triangle. This happened in Nebraska, and it was back on January 13th of this year. And this story is written by Roger Marsh. And he was in Omaha, and he watched this as a police officer. And I always really appreciate police officer sightings, just because I consider them a a credible witness.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason any police officer would want to tarnish his career any type of way and report something like a UFO when he did not have an encounter. So this was about under 500 feet above a local Walmart, and he basically said, this is kind of a curious thing that he said. I thought he was patrolling in the Walmart area, and he looked up, and he saw this triangular craft, and he said, when I first saw it, I knew right away what it was. Now, he never elaborates exactly what he means by that, but he says that the object was bright, and it was having only 3 lights, and he drew a bunch of pictures of it, and it was, and then he said it moved slowly for several seconds, and then it completely disappeared, it sounds like. And that is something you hear a lot also, that these things just totally vanish, and really makes you wonder what they are. And why it was over Walmart, I don't know. Maybe it saw the slogan out there somewhere, save money, live better, or whatever it is. I'm not sure exactly why. But he's like waving cars through the traffic and everything, and he's just watching this thing, just totally observed it. He said it never left his eyes. So interesting. I always like it when police officers report on these sightings. I really think it just kind of overall gives more credibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, because it's like firemen, where any of these kind of locker room type of jobs where you have a lot of this kind of social interaction, like they get made fun of often. I've talked to lots of police officers, and it's a kind of a men's club where people joke about things and they kid each other. So for a police officer, they know they're going to face some ridicule. So it's almost even more extra courageous for a police officer to come forward to talk about UFO sightings.
Yeah, I agree. So, I really like the ones when multiple officers in different counties or whatever, they see the same object and they're all reporting it. Those are the real good ones.
Yeah, those are great ones. So so let's talk then about, you said that you were going to leave the big story to me. Which one do you think is the big story? I can probably guess, I guess.
Yes. How about the person that was in the military and said they saw documents?
Oh, that's what you thought was a big story.
Yeah.
Okay, there's another one. That one I don't think is as big. Actually, you're talking about a guy who is a retired naval petty officer who has written. He said he worked at Naval Air Station Moffett Field, which is in California, in the 80s. And during that time, he saw UFO documents that he he was a courier. How do you say that? Courier?
Courier.
Of these files to different defense contractors. And so he saw these UFO files. He said he did this in the 80s, and his top secret clearance, his agreement to not talk about this stuff expired. And so now he feels like he can talk about it. The problem with this story, and then why I don't think it's that big yet, is that we don't know if this guy's telling the truth or not. He submitted his testimony to the MUFON reporting database as an anonymous witness. They are investigating him. In fact, he says he spoke with MUFON. He told a UK paper who got a hold of him. He talked to MUFON for 4 hours. Incidentally, he's also talked to Nick Pope, and he's been talking to Nick Pope for months. So Nick Pope has been aware of this, and Nick Pope is working to verify his account. So we're going to talk to Nick about that. But one of the problems he says is his secrecy agreement has expired, and that doesn't really expire. So that's what's kind of weird. It's kind of like, it's okay. You can tell all the secrets now.
No, it's almost like he's getting confused with the, top secret papers. A lot of times they have an expiration date of when they become non-classified after 25 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's almost like he's confusing the two, and that doesn't really help too much. It seems to me also that it would be pretty easy to verify who he is and what his position was. I'm wondering why that's taken so long.
Yeah. So, yeah, supposedly, though, Nick Pope is on the cusp of getting that verified of who he was. He believes his verbiage sounds correct. We also have some quotes in our story about this where Nick says, he's got to be careful to go through the proper channels of course, releasing files and stuff like that. But he says he doesn't have any files. He just saw them. So, yeah, that's an interesting
I mean, you can't
story.
really take them. You can't remove files or copy them legally. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I mean, it's at this point it's kind of hearsay, but it would be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out.
Yeah. So we'll see. Now, I thought you were going to say the big story was John Podesta being interviewed by on KLAS by their political correspondent. A story was written, of course, people may know KLAS for George Knapp, who's a investigative reporter. This is a Las Vegas news station, 8 News Now, and George Knapp is part of the I-Team, which is their investigation team. Now, George Knapp did do a story on this, and no doubt George Knapp was the inspiration for the UFO questions. But the interview was actually done by their political correspondent and on video, so you can see this. And luckily, yes, they did ask him about UFOs, and it's a great interview because finally we get Podesta, in front of the camera in a Q&A sort of fashion. And he talks about how he's really serious about, UFOs and disclosing or declassifying files, and he believes there are still files to be declassified on UFOs. He says he has talked to Hillary about it, and Hillary seems like she is really wanting to work with him on trying to get UFO files declassified. And so, it's interesting that we find that, he's been tweeting about this. We've all assumed it was all jokes, but he is serious about it, it seems, in this interview. And it does confirm something Hillary said not too long ago, which was that she did say John Podesta has talked to her about UFOs in Area 51, and that, she will try to do something about that. Whether or not that happens, it's interesting to have this interview and to see how serious John Podesta, who is the guy who's running her campaign, is about this topic.
Yes, I have neglected to have watched that yet, but I'm definitely going to watch it after we get done today. Yeah, I was wondering what Leslie Kean had to say about that whole thing, because she's always under the intention that he was just joking, and that was just his sense of humor. I wonder what she's saying now about all this.
Yeah, well, she even said she just seemed like that's how it was. She hasn't really said much. I know she's focused on a book coming out that's non-UFO related. I did talk to her recently, but we didn't talk much on this topic. So yeah, she hasn't said much, but she has, put out the story on her social media. So yeah, interesting. But another story. Did you see Ben Hanson's analysis on the latest?
Yes, I did.
Oh, you did? Good. So I want to talk about that. That'll be our last thing real quick here is Ben Hansen analyzed another Obama alien comment, and this one, it only lasted a minute, but it is on Ellen DeGeneres, the Ellen DeGeneres show, where she had this little girl, Macy Hensley, come on. She's a 6-year-old girl who just is like a child prodigy. She knows all this stuff about presidents, all of these facts and figures. So she got to Obama was on the show, and Ellen had Macy come out to ask Obama some questions, and one of the questions she wanted to know is if aliens are real. So right. Ben Hansen, of course, analyzed this like he has done with the other Jimmy Kimmel appearances of Obama and Bill Clinton, and it's only a 20-minute video instead of a 45-minute analysis. But it's interesting. What did you think?
Well, I thought, first of all, one of the main things he brings up in that is that instead of him denying any part of it, he just says we can't talk about it. I believe it was something like that he said. So that was something that impressed Ben the most. It was the first time that an American president said that they could not talk about.
Well, that was in the Jimmy Kimmel appearance. He said we can't talk about it. In
all right,
this appearance, all he said was, we haven't actually made direct contact with aliens yet, but when we do, I'll let you know. And Ben is saying, yeah, in Kimmel he said, I can't talk about it, but now he's talking about it. Is there a change in policy or something, is Ben's question.
Right. I'm sorry, I watched it when Ben first released it and got it backwards. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if it really is anything conclusive. I really do appreciate all the hard work that he puts into, analyzing these movies. But there was no, I kind of agree with your thoughts on the whole situation, and that is, he's having a fun time with it. He's, it's a sense of humor. He does have a good sense of humor, and makes light of it. I don't think there's any part in that showed him where he was nervous talking about it.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, these are similar jokes that I would like to use if I were him and was, not serious about a topic and talking about this. Of course, I would say different things because I wouldn't be president, but because I am more interested in have more information about the topic. But yeah, Ben is like, I think it's interesting to observe that Obama had said he couldn't say anything, and now he says makes a comment about it saying we haven't had direct contact. Ben is saying, is there a change in his strategy on this topic? That's a possibility, but the other possibility is there is no strategy. His strategy would be his joking strategy. He decides to joke in a different way. When you're being sarcastic, you're not holding to any protocols or anything. You're just being silly. And I still feel kind of like that's what it's. Ben and I talk often, and we have a running joke about this where we tease each other about this back and forth. I really do appreciate his analysis, though, and how he shows that these were scripted. I think he's got good evidence that they were looking at cue cards and stuff, and it's really cute.
I don't think there's a time when the president is interviewed at all in a public venue when he does not have what the questions are going to be asked and before him. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's
cute
possible.
Too, because they showed that this Macy also has cue cards. Because Ellen, on one of her episodes, when she got the cue card to show the audience, and the cue cards are pictures because she can't read really yet. So they might have had a picture of a UFO, but it's not like every word that Macy's saying is scripted. And was that an interesting question would be, is that her question? I would guess that it is. They asked her, what would you like to ask the president? And I don't think the president would be like, ask me about aliens. He probably doesn't really care what she wants to ask about, just that she gets her own questions answered. So it was fun. I love the clip.
I think it was pretty much her own question. Mm-hmm. And I think it's more interesting. I'd like to know what she knows about the president. She got Roosevelt off just a little bit. It was both his wife and his mother died both the same day, not his mother and grandmother. But I bet she is just full of information about presidents, and she looked cute as a button. That was kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. That was really fun. All right, well, there's the news. Of course, we've got lots of really cool UFO sightings up lately from Roger Marsh, the MUFON director of communication, who posts. In fact, he just posted a story about. I posted one that he sent us is on a former Marine who describes UFO sightings at Guantanamo in 68 and 69. So there's some really cool stuff there. And also, you can find out about how to win tickets to the Phoenix incident. Nick and I will be talking more about that movie and everything in just a minute here. And I'll talk more about that at the end of the show and how you can win some right here from this radio show you're listening to now at the end of the show. So otherwise, you could read all these stories at openminds.tv, but I know you're super busy, so thank you so much. I'm so happy you were able to take some time out and join us on the show today.
Right on, man. It's been fun.
Yeah, I wanted to hear your thoughts on the Obama comments, the Ben Hansen thing, and it's better to have someone talking about, that was there talking about how great the conference was, so I'm just not saying it. I could be totally full of it, but at least they can hear your experience. And I think, if you wouldn't have had a good time, you would have been like, well, it was okay. I think you would have been honest.
Absolutely. When it comes to something like that, I drove across country, which was absolutely crazy. I wanted to spend a lot of time in the Southwest, but ended up having to cut the trip short. But it was just everything about the whole experience there, very professional. I really enjoyed just meeting. I've met a lot of listeners, and it was through and through. It was the most enjoyable time I've had in a long time. It was wonderful.
Well, thank you. It was awesome to have you there. I mean, I get so thrilled when our friends get to be there, and it was just so great to have you there, and so great because I knew you'd be able to do a lot of great networking, which I'm sure you did, and you had a great roundtable discussion as well, huh?
Yeah, it was a blast. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Talk to you in a couple weeks.
You bet. Have a good cruise next week.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. It's going to be awesome.
All right.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk to Nick Pope. I am very happy to have back on the show Nick Pope. Hello.
Hi there.
How are you?
Fine, thank you very much. Good to be back on.
Yeah. So I guess for somebody who doesn't know, I think most people do, and I've already talked about it, you work for the MOD, Ministry of Defense, at their UFO desk for a few years in the 90s, and we'll get more into that, especially when we get into some files and stuff like that. And I guess we'll get into that now. One of the things we've talked about recently is this person who allegedly is a naval petty officer who posted something in Facebook, on MUFON, saying they, had looked at all these UFO and ET files that they had sent to different defense contractors or organizations working with the government, think tanks, and the such. He didn't keep any of it, but he feels that his secrecy agreement, I guess, for a lack of a better word, has expired, and that it's okay for him to talk about it now.
Yes. This is an interesting and quite complex situation. I've been in touch with the individual concerned actually for some time now. I believe I first got a communication maybe even a year or so back. Now, my position is always, as a former government employee, that I am not a supporter of whistleblowing, and I think the individual concerned under that and is keen not to divulge any classified information. Now, there's a problem. Obviously, a lot of people have said, well, hang on a minute. One's security oath, one's secrecy vow does not ever run out. One can have various specific clearances that are timed, but your overall duty not to disclose classified information, of course, binds one for life. So I'm just currently trying to disentangle all of this to make sure, A, that I'm not encouraging any illegal or improper activity, and B, of course, that the individual is indeed genuine, and the information is genuine too, which is a separate question. Of course, one can have a legitimate individual with a background that checks out, but for any number of reasons, the information itself may not be genuine, or certainly may not be verifiable. And I am currently going through some material to try and get those assurances. And in a sense, that's about all I can say on that for the moment. But if there are any follow-up questions which I can answer, feel free.
Yeah. So just that, you had felt one aspect, and of course I think it's the Daily Express who wrote about this and used your quotes, felt that you were, and used some quotes that at least the verbiage he uses you feel is legitimate. It seems he's using the correct words and statements if he truly did have this position.
Yes, that's certainly fair. But, of course, I think there's a proviso that I added, and I think this was when you actually asked me for some follow-up quotes. And I did say, of course, that in this day and age, with so much material freely available on the Internet about working in the government, the military, the intelligence agencies, about various details of security clearances, it is possible for a determined hoaxer, of course, to pick up a very convincing line, shall we say, in terms of
could he be confused about his security oath? Because, like you say, these sort of things don't expire. It's not like, there's a point where he can just start to divulge all of these major secrets or something like that. Do you get the feeling, or is that possibly the case, or does he seem pretty certain that these were the conditions of his security oath?
Well, that's what I'm trying to nail down. I mean, actually, for those of us who've worked in that world, the whole situation of vetting and security clearance can be complex, particularly when you're read on to a specific operation. But I mean, so in one sense, responding to your question, I do understand that it is possible for individuals to be confused. However, nobody should be confused that their overall agreement not to disclose classified information is binding for life. I mean, only the government, as the information owners, may decide to declassify something, and then as and when, or if and when they do, then if you've worked on something, then within certain constraints, it's okay to talk about that, and hence one has all the time in the media, for example, various retired military personnel popping up to say, well, when I served in Iraq or Afghanistan, this is the way it was with us. So it's complicated, but I am trying to nail all this down, and obviously as soon as there is something further to report, I'm sure that will be done, perhaps through Open Minds and or through some of the media outlets, some of the other media outlets that have already covered this. Mm-hmm. But I don't, I'm in a difficult position. I don't want to be seen, whatever the whys and wherefores of this individual case, I do not want to be seen as in any way encouraging whistleblowing. I think there's a huge amount of misunderstanding and misperception about this subject. I mean, yes, in any open and democratic society, there is a place for people to raise legitimate concerns, but information, they are not generally the subject matter experts. They're not the information owners. So it's very, very easy sometimes for somebody to take a high moral position and say, I don't see why this should be classified, to dump something into the public domain. But that person is absolutely not qualified to say what the consequences would be of disclosure. And I mean, I'm not talking obviously about specifically UFOs. I'm talking right across the board here. Mm-hmm. Their governments, we don't classify information for the fun of it. It's actually quite an ordeal in terms of the administrative work you have to go through. Mm-hmm. And there are very clearly understood reasons for classification and definitions. And I mentioned some of this at the International UFO Congress, and I said definitions, for example, of phrases like top secret in most countries run something like this, and the wording is information the disclosure of which would cause catastrophic damage to the national interest, including potential loss of life. So, that's why I don't want to give this particular individual, but anyone else out there, the impression that I'm somehow acting as a conduit for people to disclose things that shouldn't be disclosed.
Mm-hmm. And I do get your point there. I mean, I've spent some time in middle management in corporate America, and I know climbing up the ladder, at first it used to, when you're at the lower rungs, you're like, you're curious, why does management make the decisions they do? And often they can't share why they've made those decisions. But then as you become a decision maker, you begin to be aware of information you didn't have before, and that, the decisions being made often are the best decisions that can be made with the information at hand. And so then you get a better appreciation for that, okay, I don't have all the information, so I've just got to trust that, the higher-ups are making the best decision based on, information I don't have that they are privy to. And which is kind of similar then in that, certain things are classified for reasons you may not know, which is a danger of sharing that.
Absolutely. I've seen that, and I'm absolutely au fait with the read across to the business world, where concepts of, say, commercial confidentiality and developing a new product are absolutely essential. And if of course, in that cutthroat business environment, someone steals your idea, I mean, you're talking about not just millions of dollars, but potentially thousands of American jobs, say, going overseas because someone's stolen an idea. Yeah. So, people do overclassify and misclassify information, but, generally speaking, as I say, we don't do this sort of thing for fun. It does involve a lot of work, and there are generally very good reasons for it.
Mm-hmm. So, I guess for your advice then, for being in the position you're in, let's say someone in this field, a MUFON researcher or someone that runs a podcast or a website or something, does come across someone who does have information, files they perhaps shouldn't have stashed away that they did, and then they share those and they want to be made public. What would be your recommendation then to the researcher who comes across that sort of material?
Well, I would say be extremely careful, because, of course, if you find yourself in receipt of classified information and then you publish it, you will yourself be committing a criminal offense. And we've seen all too clearly with some of the recent cases that have hit the public eye. We've seen that with, for example, Edward Snowden, with Chelsea Manning, the way in which the powers that be go after somebody, and if they get someone, impose some extremely stiff custodial sentences for this sort of thing. So if this is just your interest, and suddenly someone comes to you and says, "I've got these classified documents, this classified information," be extremely careful. Do not encourage anyone, even though your curiosity may be leading you to say, "Oh, I'd love to hear about this," but the law is there, and there for a reason. I would say, of course, there are an awful lot of whistleblowers in the UFO field, and actually, this is another kind of pet subject of mine, and it doesn't make me popular with a lot of people, but there's a read across to your question. An awful lot of the whistleblowing that we see in the UFO field is bogus. People making wild claims, they did this or that for the government, and yet the authorities leave those people alone. Well, you have to ask yourself, and I just mentioned, of course, Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning. Ask yourself what happens to a genuine whistleblower. And the answer to that question is that the full resources of the state are brought to bear on them in terms of the criminal justice system and going after those people. And yet, in the UFO field, when someone says, "Oh, I was, taken to a secret underground base and I worked with aliens," people, the authorities don't go after those people. Why? I suspect because most of that information, most of those claims are bogus. So again, back to your question, to the UFO researcher, to the radio show host, whoever who finds themselves getting claims like this, trust but verify, and tread extremely carefully. Don't encourage anyone to break the law. Don't break the law yourself. And any organization, whether it's business or whether it's the military, will have a process for people who have concerns that they have perhaps been asked to do something illegal or immoral. And all organizations will have a sort of whistleblowing, not charter, though there are such things, but a process for internally raising concerns, usually through your chain of command, but sometimes with an independent figure who sort of has a dotted line relationship with the organization. So there is a process for this sort of thing. And as I say, there is a place for this in a free, open, democratic society. But that's not a license to break the law and to dump into the public domain classified material.
Mm-hmm. Well, your book on Rendlesham, because I'm trying to think of who are verifiable whistleblowers, quote unquote, and certainly John Burroughs and Jim Penniston in relation to the Rendlesham Forest incident where they were working in security and they saw this craft in the forest that they went to investigate was or even their boss Colonel Holt, was anything they shared classified?
No, we were careful about this. I think John Burroughs, Jim Penniston, and I, when we teamed up to write Encounter in Rendlesham Forest, we were very clear that, in a sense, we were none of us whistleblowers. We were people, John and Jim with a military background, myself with a government background, who had come across this thing, but people further up the chain of command, whether it's Colonel Holt or indeed General Gordon Williams, have spoken about this quite openly. So, in a sense, that gave a degree of license. But we were very, very careful in two ways. Firstly, all three of us, I think, know where the line is, and we're very careful not to cross it. But secondly, we did submit the manuscript both to the US and the UK government, to the appropriate points of contact there, to say to them, look, we are writing this book, but obviously it's sometimes difficult for us, looking back after so many years, to recall perhaps what's classified, what isn't, and indeed to see whether something has changed in that intervening period. So we did give both the US and the UK government pre-sight of the manuscript, and that's not a process that we can discuss. That's not a process, I think, that any author who goes down that road can discuss. But we were absolutely clear. We're not whistleblowers here. We were simply people who wanted to tell this story and tell it in the right way, but tell it in a legal way. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, of course, unlike some of the unverified claims doing the rounds, John Burroughs and Jim Penniston are, of course, exactly who they say they are. They served exactly say they served, and they experienced what they say they experienced. Now, what it was, of course, we don't know. There are all sorts of theories out there, but I think unlike a lot of people in this field, we were never trying to lecture to people and say, this is absolutely what we saw, and this is absolutely what's going on. It's one of those strange ironies that I think people who have genuinely done this sort of thing, come across this in the government and the military, are far less certain about what we're dealing with than a lot of the people who've not come at it from that background. Mm-hmm. I hear all the time in the UFO community, and I'm talking about all points on the belief spectrum, whether we're talking about believers or skeptics. I see this sort of, I call it a finger-jabbing certainty that I don't actually see with the genuine insiders, and that's one of the ironies of this subject.
Yeah, that I can totally see that. So then, from that perspective, are there any, or that you can think of, genuine whistleblowers when it comes to the UFO topic?
Well, interesting question. I mean, I don't want to get into naming names, but I mean, I think it depends how you define whistleblower. And I mean, I think John Burroughs and Jim Penniston are an interesting case in point, and I suspect I would disagree with a lot of people in the field about this. Some people might say, well, they are genuine whistleblowers. I would say, yeah, they're genuine, but they're not whistleblowers. I'm really struggling to think of anyone.
And listening to what you're talking about, which I agree with, and I think you don't have to be too fearful of sharing your view with me, because I think I know why you have that concern, because I have a similar concern when I share opinions like this. But yeah, I cannot think of one, to be honest. I mean, there are military people, but they're similar to Burroughs, or I can think of people whose files were released in Blue Book, and they've talked about sightings they had, or Milton Torres, for instance. But
yes, I would categorize all these people really as military witnesses. I mean, Colonel Holt himself, of course. I don't think I would describe him as a whistleblower, and I've certainly never heard him characterize himself and his testimony.
No, and he said he asked for permission first. He said, this television show wants to do something about the Rendlesham Forest. Do you all mind? And they said no, and so he thought, wow, I guess they don't mind me talking about this stuff, and he's gone on to talk about it, and they have not had a concern.
Absolutely. It's the kind of, I worked in a secret underground base, 27 levels below the surface, 52 levels above top secret, and my work colleague was an alien, and all that stuff.
Exactly. And I would I'm not even afraid, and I know some people will challenge me on it, but I don't think people will be too surprised that I don't think we can say there's a verifiable whistleblower out there. There's possible cases, but many of which I think are very dubious, if not most. So, but we don't have one that we can certainly say, this is a definite whistleblower.
Yeah, and I think I would come for all the people out there, and there will be some who are throwing their hands up and saying, Nick, Alejandro, what are you talking about? Apply the Snowden and Manning test. Ask yourself what happens to genuine whistleblowers, and then say, do we see that happening in the UFO field? And I'm not counting about. I'm not talking about sort of unverified stories about people being assassinated by the government. I am talking about the criminal justice system hauling somebody in front of the courts. As we've seen in the US with Chelsea Manning, as we've seen them want to do with Edward Snowden, and as we've seen in the United Kingdom with genuine non-UFO, but whistleblowers from the intelligence agencies, people like David Shaler and Richard Tomlinson. And so apply the Snowden and Manning test. That's what I'd say to people making these sorts of claims.
Right. And actually I have a video on YouTube, and at the National Atomic Testing Museum, I did a talk where I kind of examined from this perspective, like Bob Lazar and Richard Doty. But at least the military has taken the perspective that they're not whistleblowers because the things that they're saying are not true. And then I was able to get records on Richard Doty's involvement, and those official records fall along the same lines the military has said, is that they're any of this alleged classified information that's being shared is just not true, and so we just don't have evidence that we can say for certain that these are true. I guess it's possible, and maybe that'll come one day, but at least thus far we don't have that.
Yeah, and I mean, for people who say, but if they go after somebody, it would verify the information. Absolutely not. I mean, looking at the genuine whistleblower cases, for example, that I was mentioning, certainly in the UK, the position with claims made by former MI5 officer David Shaler and former MI6 officer Richard Tomlinson, the government just says, well, we are not going to comment on intelligence matters, but we are going after this person for breaking their oath, and none of this should be seen as confirming or denying any of the specific claims. But that's what happens when someone genuinely leaks classified information. As for the rest of it, it's largely just tellers of tall tales.
So moving on, For those who have decided to stick around on the show and not throw their phones at the wall or something. But at the UFO Congress, you were just there with us, and one of the guests that we had was Merrill Cook, the former congressman for the U.S. House of Reps for a district in Utah formerly. And at one of our last, he did a talk on Saturday, and then the last panel we had was you with Lee Spiegel, Ron Westrom, emeritus professor of sociology, to talk about mainstream science and mainstream perspectives. But after that, you had shared, and one thing about Merrill Cook, I've shared this with the audience before, but he participated in the citizen hearing, the mock congressional hearings on UFOs that were held a few years ago, and when he joined, he was skeptical of the whole topic, but he said he didn't agree with everybody, but he saw at least some information, I think, definitely like the Rendlesham guys, that was very compelling to him. And you had expressed how important you felt it was that he was there.
Absolutely. In a sense, I'm surprised that his attendance at the Congress wasn't a bigger story. And perhaps, I don't know, maybe I've misperceived this, but maybe even some of the attendees didn't quite appreciate just what a coup it was for the Congress to have him there. I mean, people all the time in this subject, whether we're talking about the cover-up or not, and whatever people's beliefs on that, the issue of government is inextricably linked in people's mind's eye with the wider issue of the UFO phenomenon. And here, for everyone to have firsthand is a former congressional representative giving you absolutely the inside track on the way politics works at the highest level. And I mean, I think in a sense, it probably his contribution was I would say almost the singularly most important one at the Congress in terms of contextualizing all the information and saying, well, look, this is the way it really works. A lot of people, I think, in this field have a misperception of the way in which government works. But Merrill Cook was, I think, giving us all some ground truth. Mm-hmm. And to get his perspective on it, it was absolutely priceless.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And particularly on that final panel, which you modestly didn't mention that you so expertly moderated, of course. But, particularly that final panel, which I think combined all the different areas of, shall we say, mainstream expertise, whether it's science, academia, politics, government, media, you throw it all together and say, how does this all interact with this subject? How does it play itself out? And I think that final panel, but particularly with Merrill Cook's presence on it, was incredibly powerful stuff. It I guess was in a sense it was literally the highlight of the conference coming at the end. I suppose one slight disappointment looking back was that many people, of course, had to start their return journeys, and some missed that. But hopefully those that did will get the DVD, because it was what happened on that panel, I think, was incredibly powerful and important.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the insight, I think, we had someone in academia, and Ron Westrom, being a sociologist, is a good representative for that, because he examines, all of this. That's what his talk was about, was how academia, especially and science, tackle phenomena that they're unfamiliar with. So he puts a lot of thought towards this. Then Lee, of course, one of the few mainstream media people covering this topic, But they both give us an insight into those areas. George Knapp is a great resource for that. Of course, you are one of the great resources for government, along with people like John Alexander, who, people who spend time in government, and then an actual politician on that end of government, because politics is a bit different than the career bureaucrat.
Yes, indeed. That's why I think he and I on the same panel were kind of different parts of the same spectrum. He at very senior level, elected official, myself as the kind of archetypal, mid-level bureaucrat, grey person, however you want to characterize that. But I think the combination worked well, and it was clear, I think, both on that panel and indeed in the private discussions that I had with Congressman Cook, that we very much spoke the same language on this, and were inhabitants of the same world, though different parts thereof. And none of this, of course, is to diminish the other participation from so many excellent people on such a wide range of subjects, whether it's Jacques Vallée, Emily Trim, John Greenwald, whoever it is. I mean, you really, and I'm not just saying this, but in terms of the depth and breadth that you managed to get in all at one event, I think this previous Congress really surpassed itself.
Well, I'm really glad you say that, because it was the 25th anniversary, so I was hoping it could be special, and at least from my point of view, it was very special. I felt that we were lucky to get the group of people that we got. But getting back to the panel, one of the things that twofold is a little bit frustrating, I think, in this field is a lot of people look at media or politics and they kind of make assumptions about how it works and kind of throw their hands in the air that, they can't interact with them. I feel that we've been successful, and I think that the panel was kind of coming to this, interestingly, is that despite everything, despite your frustrations, learning how and trying to interact with these different arenas is the most effective way to get them to see your side of things and to take what we do more seriously.
Yes, I think all too often one hears these cliches. I hear people say, "Oh, the media is complicit in the cover-up." Then I see a lot of, and I've used this phrase previously, and I used it on the panel. I see a lot of the demonization of government. And none of this will take this subject forward, because the shutters will come down and people will just think, well, I'm being, someone's having a go at me here. But if you're prepared to listen to people like Lee Spiegel and say, well, this is how, as a working journalist, it works, and when he gives advice like, don't dump a whole convoluted story. Just accept that you'll probably get a couple of sound bites in, so make them sharp and focused, and that'll probably be used. You are hearing advice from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And when you hear someone like Congressman Cook give you the ground truth of the way in which politicians kind of operate and view the world, again, it's worth listening to that sort of advice and working with the institutions that we have, rather than sort of trying to demonize everyone and apportion blame all the time.
And that's what's great about his presence.
Noticed. Yes, sorry, go on.
That's what's great that he was there, is that that was kind of his, I think what he had to say gives hope that there is access, that we can have access to people at that level. Not necessarily cynical, and he kind of, was reticent to say it because he realizes it sounds cynical, but the dollars matter a lot to the politician, and that means, the number of people, and but that they will give an ear to this sort of thing, and that's pretty much evidenced by him being there.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, politicians, it's I guess kind of easy to be cynical, but again, I think the other side of it is not just dollars but votes, and I know that those two are probably inextricably linked at times.
Exactly.
But there's no getting away from the fact that politicians are pretty savvy people, and they've got their ear to the ground. They have the finger on the pulse of public opinion, and they know that as and when an issue suddenly bubbles up as being something that someone cares about, suddenly it goes to the top of the in tray. I think a very good example of this was treatment of veterans. And we saw this kind of groundswell of dissatisfaction from veterans at the way in which the Veterans Agency was working. Then we kind of saw politicians realize that, actually, when constituents were coming to see them or emailing them, that was one of the big things that they come for help with. I mean, any politician will tell you that their mailbag, if I can use the obsolete phrase now, I suppose their inbox, is pretty full of pleas for help on things like immigration problems, getting benefits, and often those are kind of benefits that they're entitled to as veterans. So when an issue comes like that, politicians do realize that it's important, particularly when the mainstream media get hold of it, which is why all this plays into each other in terms of the synergies here. So the moment the UFO issue moves, as I believe it's moving, from just the kind of silly season treatment to it's transitioning through the phase where it's getting some more serious treatment. And when it becomes an issue that a lot of constituents care about, suddenly politicians will not just be joking about it on Jimmy Kimmel or wherever, but they'll be maybe taking it a little bit more seriously. The way to get there is the kind of slightly savvy, I guess, John Podesta way of coming through the back door and saying, well, this is really an open government freedom of information issue. And I don't know what's out there, but I know that people care about this and want to know, and we want to know too. And that's the way that Podesta's doing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what's great is then you have people like Podesta or Merrill or and beginning to dabble in this is Hillary and Bill Clinton. At least then you start to have these higher level people joining the conversation in a serious way, at least in a way in which it's evident, and I don't know that for sure we knew it was evident that she was taking it serious with Hillary until this recent Podesta interview. But and when it's evident they are taking the issue seriously, I think that really opens the door to the topic then, getting in the conversation.
Yes. Now, that's not to say that the ridicule factor isn't still there. Mm-hmm. It is, and it will be interesting to see how this issue, and if this issue, comes to the fore a little bit more in the presidential election campaigns. I'm frankly surprised, for example, that Donald Trump hasn't made more of this to, in a sense, try to smear Hillary Clinton and portray her as crazy for believing this sort of stuff. Now, maybe that's something that he's saving if he, and indeed if Hillary get their respective party nominations. But there's no getting away from the fact that this is I think only the president or a past president can joke about this. I think that the candidates have to be much more careful. And we saw that, of course, when Dennis Kucinich was seeking the Democratic nomination some years ago, when the question came up, of course, about his UFO sighting with Shirley MacLaine. And I won't say that single incident was the end of his campaign, but it certainly didn't do him any favors. Mm-hmm. And so I think it will be interesting to see, and my betting will be that it does. It'll be interesting to see whether this issue comes up. I think it will.
Right. And it could be that they're bracing themselves it's better, they're trying to get in front of it, so that they at least have some, they're out there before they get hit with it.
I think so. It's better. It's always better. And this is one of my inside kind of bits of knowledge, I guess, from my time in government. It's always better if there's something out there which is embarrassing or a bad news story, that you put it out first, and that way at least two things. Firstly, you can put a more positive spin on it, and secondly, you are in control of the agenda. You are being proactive and not reactive. Mm-hmm. So I think if it does come out, whichever way, but for example, if it is put to Hillary Clinton, hey, what's going on with John Podesta making these statements and your interest, she would be very well advised, I think, to frame her response in terms of reflecting her commitment to open government and to freedom of information.
Mm-hmm. Now, another media issue, which was an exciting thing to be involved with, I felt, and I think you did too, however, on the entertainment end, is the Phoenix Incident movie. I think it was great Keith decided to participate in the conference. They had done this viral campaign. They started about a year ago, and our website was one of them that called them out on, this isn't real, this is a marketing campaign, and he wanted to contact us to be sure that, hey, he really has an interest in the field, he's not trying to do any damage to the field. That's been debated. Certainly listeners will disagree, in fact, many of them, with the way their marketing goes about that sort of thing, kind of like Fourth Kind and stuff like that. But what's great is he wants to include the topic when he releases this movie, to say that this is based off of a real UFO case and there's real UFO research out there. How do you feel about the movie and your participation?
Well, first off, I would say I think like you, I've seen the movie and I very much enjoyed it. I consider myself something of a film buff, and I go and see movies on a wide range of subjects. I enjoyed the Phoenix Incident, and I would urge those people who are maybe in some cases criticizing it to certainly to see it before saying anything. Now, that's not to say some people have not seen it and they're not too pleased, and I certainly came across some of those at the Congress, not just attendees, but some of the speakers too. But I would say this, Keith's not making a documentary. I think people sometimes, don't understand the film industry, don't understand that people can take an incident, a theme, but then as a fiction writer, as a filmmaker, can take the narrative in a very different way. Responsibility, unless you are producing a documentary, to stick to the facts. You must entertain your audience first and foremost, and if through that you bring some new people to the subject, then that's a great thing. Now, I don't think he is trying to fool anyone. I think there are a lot of people who don't understand, for example, what a found footage movie is and what the whole found footage movie subgenre is, I guess first popularized by the Blair Witch Project, but also seen in movies like Cloverfield. So it's a complicated business, but this blurring of the lines between fact and fiction has gone on for decades across a range of different subjects. And I think one of Keith's aims in this, which I very much support, is one of the things he said to me, and he probably said it to you as well, was look out at the audience at the International UFO Congress. There's a great audience there, but there's not as many young people as there might be. How do you bring more young people to the Congress and indeed to this subject more generally? And one of the ways that you bring them is through sci-fi and through the gaming industry. Now, those are kind of worlds in which Keith moves. And I know a lot of people in the UFO kind of field feel a bit kind of sniffy about this, but I'm a supporter. I mean, there is a genuine problem with this subject of we know that young people are interested in this, but we can't seem to get too many of them actively involved as researchers, investigators, and as attendees at conferences. So I think a movie like Phoenix Incident perhaps provides another route in for these people. But, don't let's throw out the baby with the bathwater. I mean, I've done a lot of work, as you know, I think, with Hollywood before, in a consultancy and in a spokesperson role.
And gaming, right?
And gaming, as well. as well, with the whole XCOM series of games, and with Resistance Burning Skies. And I've been criticized by a lot of people in the community, including some fairly big names, who don't like this. But what? I mean, did Stephen Hawking get criticized when he took a cameo role in the Star Trek franchise? I don't know. Maybe he did, but if he did, I think that's grossly unfair and shows that people aren't, in some cases, capable of distinguishing between fact and fiction. Are we supposed to throw out Stephen Hawking's theoretical physics work just because he took a walk-on cameo role in Star Trek? No, I would say absolutely not. So, don't let's demonize Hollywood when it covers this subject. I mean, if Keith was making a documentary and produced what he'd done, then fair enough. But he didn't, and he hasn't. So let's not. And as you say, we sat on a round table discussion, which will be shown after certain screenings of the movie. And you, me, Lee Spiegel, Stan Friedman, bouncing around ideas and saying, well, you've just watched a movie, but how much of this is real? I think that's helpful to this subject. I really do.
I do too. I mean, the core audience they're going for is 19 to 35. And like he said, looking out at the crowd at the Congress, there's not very many people in that age group at the conference. And so a lot of them don't get to hear what you have to say, or Stanton has to say, or Lee has to say. Some of them probably don't even know the UK did UFO studies, or that or that there's a nuclear physicist who, popularized Roswell and did that research. So I think they're going to be really shocked when at the end of the movie they see and hear that there are cases that are similar to what's being displayed in the movie, and it's really going to floor them that these very credible people are sharing this information. It'll turn them on to, Lee Spiegel's stories at the Huffington Post, or hopefully ours as well, and hopefully they'll come to the conference. I see it as all positive, and that's one issue with the older crowd that I've had throughout the years. There's always this thing in the UFO field: how do we get younger people involved? And my cousin, Jason, who you met years back, but he had a college group, and he had ideas, and it seems that a lot of the older crowd just don't like the ideas. They don't, well, we can't do that. We can't do that. Well, we can and we need to if we want to get to these other demographics.
Absolutely. And, your Congress is obviously much more representative than some, but at risk of being really controversial. There are an awful lot of middle-aged to elderly white men in suits at a lot of these events, and I think we do need to be more inclusive, whether we're talking about women, ethnic minorities, young people. There's no getting away from the fact that that's an issue, and it's not, of course, it's not unique to ufology. Heck, you could say it's an issue across a whole range of topics in everyday life, whether it's politics, entertainment, science, whatever it is. But that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be addressed. And just tying everything back to the original question, I guess. You know, the Phoenix incident, the movie does give young people a route into this subject, and why wouldn't we want to grab that opportunity with both hands?
Mm-hmm. I'm very excited about it. I'm a little nervous that because March 10th, in fact, on this show, we're giving away a pair of tickets. No, I'm giving away 2 pairs of tickets to the movie. I haven't even figured out the criteria yet, but I'll tell people, when we're done with this interview, how they can win those tickets. But it's March 10th that it's being shown around the country by Fathom Events at movie theaters, your local movie theater. Yeah, and then after the movie, there's this 45 minutes interview they've cut together. It's actually an hour and a half of us talking, of you, me, Lee, and Stanton. And it was a fun discussion because we, focused on the Phoenix Lights and triangular type craft. You had a great case. They've actually put it up on YouTube already, you talking about the Cosford case.
I saw that, yes.
And then Lee Spiegel had his own amazing sighting. And of course, Stanton always has some great things to say. So I'm really excited about it.
Yes, and it's I know that it's going to be coming to the Cinequest Festival in San Jose too, and so yeah, I definitely urge people to look out for it and go see it and decide for themselves.
Yeah. And then I guess lastly here, speaking of younger people involved with this field, you had mentioned Emily Trim, and I guess for me, and I'm guessing for you, that was kind of one of the highlights, is to hear her speak.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, again, all too often, and I use this phrase deliberately, given our last point, but one hears a lot from the sort of grand old men of ufology, so to speak. And I'm
Are you calling me old?
Like Stanton. Well,
we've both got a substantial amount of gray hair.
Well, yes. With me, it's just the way the light strikes it. But,
yeah.
that's my excuse. But I'm thinking of people like Stanton, and I mean that in no terms to be a sort of disrespectful statement. But when you have someone like Emily Trim come along and sort of blow the conference away with this first-person testimony, it kind of brings it back to what this is all about. That, we can have a whole bunch of people up there, sort of experts, speculating about all this. But when there are people out there who say, well, I lived this, then it kind of reminds us all, really, what this is all about. And what it's all about is people having strange experiences. And I think we do ourselves a disservice if we ever forget that. And I think hearing from someone like Emily Trim, reframes the whole debate and brings us back to that central and very important place.
Mm-hmm. And for me, it brings a lot of energy back into the field. A lot of this does, and that's what we hope to do every year, is inspire people and to show that this field can be new and fresh. A lot of people talk about how it's gone stale, but I don't think anybody who went to the conference can feel that way afterwards.
No, and I mean, I don't know what you thought, but I mean, you obviously do this quite deliberately. I think it's a sort of courageous decision to put people like Emily and Luigi on, and I know that their sort of energy and enthusiasm carried over sort of out of the presentation and into the Congress more generally, and they were going around, for example, having their photos taken with the model aliens that you have in the foyer, for example, and really just having some fun too. And I think again, that you used that word yourself, that energy is refreshing and very welcome.
Yeah, we try to be inclusive as well, and I think that's a big term for us, and that's why when Keith comes to us with an idea, I know it's going to be controversial. I know we're going to take some heat for it. I was surprised there was only one person who really gave it to me really hard. But we also get a lot of praise because there's a lot of people who like it. But when you're going to be inclusive as possible, trying to be honest and open about what this field encompasses and represent it all fairly, without putting our bias on it, you're going to get those people with opposing views who are going to be frustrated that you featured some of those things. But what was great about Emily, and I thought interesting, is that, I mean, kind of universally, everybody was so intrigued and fascinated with what she had to say on the, left, for the left or right brain. It's a really great case with lots of evidence that was carefully researched, and on the other end, it's a potential interaction with extraterrestrials. I mean, it's fringe. I think it pleases a lot of different people. So that sort of excitement, let alone she's just such a sweet person, and her art was so interesting. Luigi was a great speaker. Emily wrote a great piece about her experiences, and so. Yeah, it was definitely another one of those highlights that helped set the stage, so to speak.
Yeah, I think their involvement was great. We probably don't have time to mention too many other people, but bringing in sort of younger filmmakers like Jeremy Corbell is I think, again, an indicator of how this field is changing. And certainly I very much support the fact that you at Open Minds put people like that onto the kind of stage and give them a platform. And I think those new kind of people who are not the sort of grand old men, not that you shouldn't hear from the grand old men. The grand old men still have some very important things to say, but let's listen to what the Emily Trims, the Keith Arams, the Jeremy Corbells, have to bring to the table. And I think whether you're a conference organizer or whoever you are, risk taking is an important and actually positive thing. I mean, I know a lot of, I know a few people in business, and I remember in government, for example, years ago, the phrase "I'm a risk taker" would have been a bad thing. Now it's a good thing. It's all about innovation and doing new things, or even when you do the same things, do them in different ways. And so I see positive signs here for the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I just want, wrapping this up, I guess, getting back to you and your talk, too, because that was great. We didn't even touch on your talk, which is great. People can get the DVD
sure.
and check that out, or we'll also have that up on our online streaming service real soon here. But I don't know that people realize you do this, too. You don't do the same talk twice. I mean, you change things up. And even for this talk, it was great because you sent me some ideas. I said, well, can we mix up a couple of these? And you said, sure, no problem. You got me a paragraph on what you were going to talk about within a few hours, and we were off. That you change it up every time as well.
Yes, I hadn't always done so in the past, but I've decided that unless I'm specifically asked to give a specific lecture that somebody wants, like I want you to come and talk about Rendlesham, I will, where I can, do a new subject to keep things fresh. Mm-hmm.
And that's really cool because this was speculation on disclosure, but of course it's very educated speculation, which is the talk you did at the conference, and it was great. And having you there to be part of the panel is invaluable. And having you there to be involved with the Keith Aram Phoenix incident discussion is invaluable. So you were another one of the highlights of the conference for me.
Thank you.
So it was great to have you. And it was great to have you here for this interview. So thank you so much for being here. And this was a fun discussion.
Yes, I enjoyed it. We covered a lot of ground, and I hope people will find it interesting and thought-provoking, whether they agree or disagree.
And I guess the last thing, besides the Phoenix incident, is there anything else that people should look out for?
Well, I guess the final batch of Ministry of Defense files should be released certainly this year. They should have been passed from the Ministry of Defence to the National Archives in the UK by March. That was certainly the aspiration, and was the case last time I checked. It may then take up to 9 months for the National Archives to prepare the material for public release. But watch this space. They should be coming this year, and it might just be sooner rather than later.
Great. And if people are thinking, wait, I thought they released all those files, well, I think largely due to the work of John Burroughs, they happened to find another batch.
Absolutely. There were 18 files which they, shall we say, metaphorically speaking, found in the back of a cupboard somewhere. But yes, right. John Burroughs was John Burroughs and his very intelligent and targeted use of the UK's Freedom of Information Act was a big part in finding this additional material.
All right.
Watch space. There's more to come.
We'll keep an eye out, and I'll probably have to have you back when those come out then.
Sure.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much to Nick Pope for being on the show yet again. It was so cool to have him there at the conference. And he's just a brilliant person. And I just so appreciate his perspective and his insights into this topic. So he's, to me, the perfect person to talk to about the conference and wrapping up and getting his impressions and what he felt was important and, maybe possibly more groundbreaking or something that moves the field forward. Same for Martin, who we heard at the beginning of the show. So I just super happy to have them both on the show. NickPope.net is where you can read more about Nick Pope if you're interested. Of course, we've had him on the show. He's kind of a regular guest. But if you're more interested in what he's up to, check out NickPope.net. He's always up to something. And now is the time to talk about the Phoenix Incident movie and how you can win tickets. So here's the deal. Of course, this is what's great. So Fathom Events is holding a special event all across the country on March 10th. So at selected theaters on March 10th, which is just a couple days away, locally it's like 7:30 p.m. They're going to show this movie, The Phoenix Incident, that we've been talking about for months now, that we saw at the conference, that Nick talked about. He's seen it now a couple times. He just watched it again at another screening he was able to get to, a special event. But this is what's cool, is at this screening on March 10th, at the end of the movie, they're going to show a 45-minute interview with me, Nick Pope, Lee Spiegel, and Stanton Friedman. And this is awesome because we're going to talk about triangular UFOs. We're going to talk about dogfights with UFOs. We're going to talk about significant, UFO and triangular UFO sightings. And including, some of you heard, us talk about it before, but Lee Spiegel's personal triangular UFO sighting. We're going to talk with Nick about the Cosford case, but other really cool cases. And the setting is just great. And what's exciting about this is that, all of these people who just watched this Phoenix Incident movie, which is a thriller and a bit of a horror, so they're going to be freaked out about this UFO sighting and everything. And then they're going to see this interview with us where we're talking about real UFO cases, and they're probably going to be freaked out and not be able to sleep the rest of the night when they find out that UFOs are real. So this is going to be super cool. I'm so excited about it. So here's what you do, people. Here's the thing. Okay, I need you to email me ASAP. As soon as possible, because we're going to choose a winner in the morning, meaning Tuesday, the morning of Tuesday, March 8th. So I know some of you probably aren't listening to this till Tuesday or later, and I'm so sorry, but hopefully you've been on our social media, because that's another way to win, is if you've been looking at our social media. We posted a Facebook post and a Twitter post where you can also win tickets. We're giving away several sets of tickets, so hopefully you saw that. But here's what you do. Email me by the morning what the base is that the former Marine saw the UFO sightings in 68 and 69. This is a news story, I think the last news story that I mentioned at the top of the show with Martin when we talked about UFO news. We talked about a former Marine who worked at a certain base in 68 and 69 and email me the name of that base. That means you might have to do a little research if you don't remember, but it's right there. The story was just posted today, and you'll find it at openminds.tv. So just go to openminds.tv, and you'll find out this information if you don't have it, or re-listen to the show again. This show was great, so it's worth listening to a second time anyway. And then on March 10th, on the evening, you'll be able to, and this is the other thing you're going to want to do, is I have a link on a story I just posted at openminds.tv and also on our Facebook and our Twitter, where you can go make sure that there is a movie theater near you that is showing the movie. Because I'll also need in this email which theater that you'll want to go to. So again, to recap, to win, I'm going to need the name of the base that the former Marine worked at where he saw the UFOs, and I'm going to need which theater that you want to go to so we can make sure and have those tickets ready for you. And if it's not obvious or your name is not included, then give us your name because we'll have the tickets waiting for you out the counter under your name in the theater of your choice, one of many theaters across the country that is showing the film. So I'm so excited. And then once you go, even if you don't win the tickets, you need to go to this to support UFO research. I want to hear what you think about the interview and about the movie. Now, the movie, I'm telling you people, is rated R. It's a horror. If you don't like cuss words, if you don't like, getting scared, then don't go. The market for this film is 19 to 35-year-olds. When we showed it at the UFO Congress, we had some older people who said, "Oh my gosh, that was crazy! They were freaking out." And they're like, "Why? There's violence. There's cussing." We know. We told you that. If you don't like violence or cussing, this movie's not going to be for you. If you like action and horror and UFO action adventure type of thriller stuff, you're gonna love it. It's found footage. It's kind of like Cloverfield and Blair Witch mixed together. So that's the type of film it is. Anyway, go to openminds.tv, go to Open Minds Production Facebook, or go to @OpenMindsTV on Twitter to find out more about how to win the tickets. And because you're listeners of the show, remember, you can email me the name of the base that the former Marine saw the UFOs in 68 and 69 with your name and with the name of the theater you want to go to. Email that to contact@openminds.tv or contact@ufocongress.com. That's contact@openminds.tv. And you'll win these tickets. So good luck, and I hope to see you there. Otherwise, I want to thank Caleb Hanks for the opening and close music. He's awesome. If you go to the openminds.tv/radio page, you will see where you can listen to more of his music. Also, if you go to the UFO Congress Facebook page, or we've also got it at the Open Minds Production and at my personal Facebook page, you'll see pictures from the UFO Congress. So that's really cool. A lot of pictures, including the people who won the EBE Awards. And in fact, I should let you know who won. This is really cool. So Jeremy Corbell, who we've had on the show multiple times, he won for Best Short for his Lazar Cosmic Whistleblower film. If you go to our website, you can find out more about how to watch some of his films. Also, if you go to his Facebook page for Jeremy Corbell, or you can actually go to his Extraordinary Beliefs website and also see his films. But he won the short. The long form was won by Paul Davids, who did a movie on Marilyn Monroe Declassified. We'll have him on the show soon to talk about that. But he suspects that Marilyn Monroe's death was tied to, UFO information she had. And he has a film making his case for this. And people loved it. They were floored. And so he won the award for the EBE for that. And then the People's Choice Award, Tanya Madenford and Frank Jacob won that for their movie Packing for Mars. So the movie was Packing for Mars, won the People's Choice Award. Tanya's awesome. She's the beautiful kind of, she looks like kind of a space being herself. She's got this blonde hair, kind of these go-go boots she wears often. And the reason I'm describing her is because you can see her at many UFO conferences, actually. She, which is cool, she travels around the world going to these UFO conferences and making movies, and it's really cool that she does stuff in this field. So really excited. I'm excited for all of the winners. Congratulations. Thank you all so much, those of you who were able to attend. It was wonderful to have you there. I hope you had a wonderful experience. And it was great to meet those of you who came up to say hello. Even some of you from the UK. I think there was one of you from Germany came and said hello. So people from all over the world. It was so great. And if I was really distracted, because I'm just like super busy, like my mind is totally, completely on the conference, and I'm thinking, what do I got to do? I got to do this, I got to do that, I've got to get with the speaker and make sure his talk is working. I've got to make sure this sign is straightened. I got to make sure this is done and that is done, just to make sure that everybody has a wonderful experience. So I am really distracted at the conference, and I do realize that, and I apologize if it didn't seem like I was giving you all the attention that I should have, but do rest assured that I greatly appreciate you being there, and I very much loved meeting every one of you. We've already got the conference going for next year, February 15th to the 19th. Like I told Martin, I'm already excited about it with some of what we're going to have in store for that. But remember, if you're not on our email list, you really need to get on that. If you go to openminds.tv, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner a blue box where you can put in your email address and get on there. Also, if you go to ufocongress.com, you'll see a big blue box in the middle of the screen where you can put your email, because we'll keep you up to date on what's going on with the conference and what's going on with everything else, the cool interviews we've gotten, updates on some things. And when we have a new UFO report, we had a new UFO report we just posted on Friday where you can learn more about the naval guy we talked about at the beginning of the show. And we also do a recap of the UFO Congress, so you'll be able to see some video and some pictures from the Congress there. So there you go. That is everything. Thanks again for joining us today. Again, I won't be here next week. I'll be sailing the seven seas, actually just one of them. But I'm going to be having a lot of fun relaxing after this